Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
I did send you a lot of text messages, and actually, I wanted to send you more, but I figured you might block me if I continued to send stuff, so I stopped.
I'm not going to block you, but you do send me a lot of stuff, and I'm like, sometimes you're bombarding me, and actually some of the stuff that you send me I've already known about for days.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
I'm Josh in Toronto.
And I'm Skip in Montreal.
In today's episode, old hockey equipment,
Professional athletes who should just shut up.
and some mascot news.
But first, last week in TV land.
Okay, Skip, so we're into almost the third month of me watching way too much television. And I think there's like an imprint on my couch of where I sit all the time. So I might have to sit on a different part of the couch to just even it out.
You have no idea what's going on in my house. Like, I'm like a cripple. I have such a sore back, I can hardly walk around. And it's exactly because of what you just said. It's from this sitting in the same spot on the couch. Like, my back is dead. So I'm sitting in different places.
You need to buy a new chair just for yourself that has good back support and sit in that chair when you watch television.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what I need to do.
TV?
Here's some of the junk I watched on television this week.
Oh, God. Okay.
And I want to know if you watched any of this.
Okay, this is awesome. I was like wondering how you're going to start the show. I was assuming it was going to be with Blake Snell, but I guess it's going to be after.
So there's this show. Okay, there's no way you watch this. It's a new show. It just started like a month ago, not even. And I think they started doing it just because of this whole lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Hat Trick Trivia. Have you seen this?
No. What channel?
Well, sometimes it's on NBC and sometimes it's on Sportsnet. So like it's a thing that the NHL does.
Uh-huh.
And they just basically, they'll give it to Sportsnet because they're a partner. They'll give it to NBC because they're a partner. So
I haven't seen it. No, not at all. Who hosts it?
I'm surprised you haven't seen it. So it's hosted by PK Subban.
What? How did I miss this?
Because it's a very low budget show. Like it's basically
Okay.
it's PK Subban in his house, sitting in front of his computer like you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
And so the episodes are only 30 minutes and they basically have 3, sometimes 4 different contestants on each episode.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so they'll pick, someone from Calgary, let's say, and they'll ask 3 questions about the Calgary Flames. Or they'll go to St. Louis and they'll ask 3 questions about the St. Louis Blues. And the contestants are supposed to be like diehard fans of their home team, so they're supposed to know everything about their team.
Right.
Now, I'll tell you. So basically, if you get the first question right, you get like a baseball hat from that team. And you can say, okay, I'm done. I'll take the hat and I'll go home.
Okay.
Or you can go for the second question, which is obviously harder.
Yeah.
And if you get it right, then you get a baseball hat and a jersey from that team.
Ooh, they broke the budget.
Right. The first 2 questions are actually pretty easy. Like I've gotten the first 2 almost every time, and I'm not even a fan of that team.
Right.
So then they're like, okay, you want to go to the third question. If you go and you get it wrong, you get nothing.
Right.
If you get it right, you get the hat, you get the jersey, and you get 2 free tickets to any NHL game next season.
Well, whenever that's going to be.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
I think I would stop and just take the hat and the jersey.
I have to tell you, most of the people get the third one wrong. Like it's a hard
Really?
question.
No, but I mean, I'm saying like the prize is no good, is what I'm saying.
Oh,
because you're
okay.
never going to cash it in. You don't know when you're going to be able to go to a game.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay, so I definitely
and they
have
also
to try this show.
They also sometimes so usually it's just like PK Subban and Joe Schmo from St. Louis or Julie Schmo from wherever.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes they'll bring on like when they had the diehard Flames fan.
Yeah.
They brought on Johnny Gaudreau to ask the questions.
Okay.
So now the reason I mentioned this, I was watching the other day and I was doing stuff. So like I wasn't really focused, and PK will say the name of the next contestant. And he's like, Avi Sherman, are you there? I'm like, what? I'm like, did Skip enter this contest and didn't tell me about it? Because like, how is Avi Sherman on this? So like, I had to do a double take. I had to rewind. I'm like, did I hear properly? And then it turns out.
Is this guy from Calgary?
No. The contestant?
Okay. Yeah.
The contestant turns out is from Kansas City. So I knew it wasn't you.
Super weird.
But then I listened closely and they put the name on the screen. It's Abby, Abby Sherman.
Okay.
But it sounds a lot like Avi Sherman. And so like I freaked out.
Because I get a lot of emails for an Avi Sherman in Calgary.
Oh, okay. Well,
like, and actually they're legit. Like, you can see they're not spam. Like, and often, like, at least 10 times I've written back to the person saying, you got the wrong person. Because I don't want them to be screwed up. One time it was from like a hotel, and it was all the details of their wedding. Because they had just, like, it was like, thank you for visiting our hotel. We're excited to plan your wedding for you. Here's all the details that you and your wife discussed, the flowers, the catering, the food. It was like a whole breakdown. And they sent it to me. And I wrote back saying, by the way, this is not the right person. Because I felt bad. You know, I didn't want to just
the person has the same exact name as you?
It must have the same name, and the email address must be similar. Like, that's all I could say. But it's like, there's so many times I've got emails for this person. And I know the person lives in Calgary. I could tell. Like, you could see the other addresses of the people, the phone numbers, you know, like, it's just quite bizarre.
Anyhow,
so I haven't watched that. I haven't watched this PK Subban show, but I'm going to check it out. I like trivia shows, so why not, right?
Yeah, it might be on right now, actually. Like, it's on at weird times of the day, and they repeat it like a million times. So you
tell me again what it's called? Hat Trick Trivia. Okay.
Hat Trick Trivia.
Yeah. Okay, I'm writing it down.
What else are you watching? Either on Sportsnet or on NBC. Okay. Another thing that I watched that I'm sure you didn't, I'll get to the other stuff later, but I watched another 30 for 30 this week. They're putting a lot of them on lately, and you know I like that show, or those documentaries. And they had one on, it was the year that the NFL used replacement players. I'm sure you remember that.
Of course, yeah.
It was actually quite a good documentary. I highly recommend it. It's called Year of the Scab.
Oh. Okay, I should check it out.
I think it's going to be on again, if not this weekend, maybe on Tuesday. But like, if you look at your guide, you should see it because they usually repeat them when they put them on.
I'll definitely watch it. I mean, I often ask you, like, how is it possible that the NFLPA is like so weak, and they like they don't even have guaranteed contracts, and the owners always get their way, and actually it all stems from that. It all stems from this when they use replacement players. Like, they basically broke them, and they said, and they never challenged them since then. And it's like 30 years ago, right? So
it's more than 30 years ago now. And yes, I was stunned at the things that I learned from watching it, because you're absolutely right. Like, the players were so not unified. And
they're still not, though, when you see, because the last time they had a vote, remember, before all this COVID business, remember they voted on like extending the season and all the different rules. And we talked about it, how there's kind of a split between the players that are established, that make a lot of money, who don't make up a big percentage of the union. And the bigger percentage of the union are all these guys making the minimum who are going to be cut after week 1. You know, like, there's so many players that are just, they want to get their paycheck, right? And that's the biggest thing with the NFLPA, right? Anyways,
you're absolutely right. And so I was stunned at a couple things. I was stunned that some of the regular players crossed the picket line. I couldn't believe that.
Wow.
And I actually played, but it was interesting because this 30 for 30 focuses mostly on the Washington Redskins, because their head coach, I think it was Joe Gibbs at the time, some of the regular players called him like a week after the replacement players had played a game already. And some of the regular players called him and said, you know, we want to come back. We want to cross the picket line. And Joe Gibbs said, no. I want you guys to stay unified. It's either all or nothing. So he didn't let any of the replacement players join the team. So the Redskins were playing against teams that were using like half a regular roster and half a replacement roster.
And they had nothing.
And the Redskins had nothing, but the Redskins won every single replacement game somehow.
Because Joe Gibbs was a great coach.
He was, I guess.
Yeah.
And the other thing that like, it didn't necessarily surprise me, but I was very upset to see when the replacement players were coming to the stadium, they were all in the same bus together. The regular players were like standing outside, like throwing things at the bus and smashing the windows. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you worried about? You're making millions of dollars. And okay, granted, it was 30 years ago, so the salaries were not as high, but still, like,
they're making a lot of money. Yeah. You're
making a lot of money, and you're like going to threaten these, you know, no-name people who are just trying to, you know, like, they have regular jobs, and some of them make minimum wage, some of them make less than minimum wage. You're gonna threaten their livelihood. It's like, calm down. So I highly recommend it.
Good.
Yet another thing that I watched that I'm sure you didn't,
Yeah.
The movie A Hard Day's Night was on TV the other night. And I've never seen it before. I don't know if you've seen it.
What, is this the Beatles movie?
Yes, but this one actually has the real Beatles in it. It's not like that other movie I watched a few months ago.
I know, I understand. But like those Beatles movies are bogus, no?
Well, I'd never seen it before, so I wanted to see it.
Well, it's just like a reason for put the Beatles on film and play music. There's nothing to it.
That's exactly what it is. Like, I
All
thought
those
there was an
movies.
actual plot, but there wasn't.
No, it's just it's like you ever see that old TV show The Monkees?
I've heard of it.
Well, there was the group The Monkees.
Yes.
They're basically like a comedy version of the Beatles. That's what those movies are. It's the same thing.
Anyway, it was a distraction for 90 minutes.
Oh boy. Well, last night I watched Gladiator for like 2 hours.
Doesn't your wife love that show?
No, with the movie with Russell Crowe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was a distraction for 2 hours. I think that's more worthwhile, no?
It's a toss-up.
So listen to this. We started watching it. It was on AMC. I'm subscribed to AMC now because they have a lot of movies.
Oh.
So it's on, and we start watching it. But there's so many freaking commercials. It's like it's so annoying, right?
Who can watch anything with commercials these days?
I know. So we're watching it, and there's so many commercials. I'm like, wait a minute. During the commercial, I turn on Netflix. I just search up Gladiator. I'm like, oh, it's on here. Let's just watch it. So then we start watching on Netflix. We fast forward half an hour to where we are, and then it was perfect.
Okay, in that situation, let's say you didn't have Netflix. Here's what you should do. You should just record it and watch it later and fast forward the commercials.
I know, but the thing is, we wanted to watch something then. That like.
Okay,
only so much
so the next thing I watched, one of these, you definitely watched. At least I hope you did.
Okay.
The Goldbergs and Schooled.
I watched this week, but I never know with the Goldbergs if I'm watching a new episode or an old episode. Was Schooled like this one with Lainey and her new boyfriend? Is that the one?
It was, well, both of them were the season finale for both this week.
I watched them, so it has to be. What was the Goldbergs about? And I'll tell you if I watched
The
it.
Goldbergs is they go to prom. And on Schooled, they go to prom also.
Yeah. They go to prom, and Adam's dating the girl Bria.
Bria B.
I love
that name.
Okay, yes, I saw it. And then it's the Pretty in Pink is the tie-in to the 80s, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and then I watched Schooled right after, and I've never really watched Schooled before.
And for Schooled, it was Clueless, the tie-in.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
We've talked about the Goldbergs before. We both like the show, but we haven't talked about it recently. And the last episode, in fact, the last 2 episodes of the Goldbergs, I found to be really, really good. And maybe that's because I haven't watched anything good lately. I don't know. But but they were really good, the last 2. And especially, I love the music that they use in both the shows. So, I still have the song If You Leave by OMD in my head. I've had it in my head since Wednesday.
Well, that's playing at the prom when he comes there to win Bria back.
Exactly.
Right?
And then in Schooled they used a Cranberry song. So yeah, they're both good shows. That's all.
But Schooled is not really good, you think?
Well, it's almost the same as the Goldbergs. So if you like the Goldbergs, I don't see how you wouldn't like Schooled.
It is, but it's just that the teachers have such a bigger part in the show, like the principal and the gym teacher. Like those guys are just too annoying sometimes.
That's fair.
Like I like the Goldbergs because it's the family. I like the kids, right? So, yeah.
The 2 episodes ago on the Goldbergs, it was hilarious. They have that little scene at the beginning of the show before they even play the theme music. I don't know the future, but the past keeps getting clearer every day.
It was April 2nd, 1980-something.
Right.
And so 2 episodes ago, I don't know if you saw, Adam is in the basement with Bria.
I saw, yes.
And then all of a sudden, the mom comes down.
The mom comes in.
And then the dad comes down. And then the grandfather comes down. And then the brother comes down. And the sister comes down. Then the neighbors come down. It's hilarious.
Yeah, no, the Goldbergs is brilliant, actually. It's a really brilliant show. I don't know, how much more it has in it, to be honest. How many more episodes are they going to do? Is it going to keep going? I don't know.
Well, that's it for this season, so.
I think it could keep going, at one point, they would have to look they've already kept it going with the 2 older kids at college, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think they would have to keep it going with Adam at college.
They would, I haven't heard that it's canceled.
And then maybe the parents are less of a part of the show and it's more about the next stage of his life. I feel like that maybe is where it's going. I don't know.
I guess
we'll see.
So I'm waiting for you to talk about Survivor.
Well, it was the season finale. They had a big 3-hour episode.
3 hours.
Yeah. It was weird. I don't know. Have you ever watched Survivor at all?
Well, usually the finale is live, I thought.
Exactly. So usually, like, the show ends. They've all voted on who the winner is. And then Jeff leaves with the urn or the basket of votes, whatever, and he just leaves, right? And now months have passed, and then they do the reunion with everyone live. So they couldn't do that. So he's in his garage, Jeff, and it's all decked out with Survivor stuff. And he's just alone in his garage, and then everybody else is on like a big 30-person Zoom call or whatever. But they didn't really have any part. And then they did the whole show, and then at the end they came back. He read the votes like on Zoom, and only the final 3 were on like the Zoom call with him to see the winner. It was such a tremendous season. Like, I know I sound like a nerd about Survivor, but like, man, oh man, was it ever good? Like, and then even the last 2 hours, like everything that happened in the last episode to get to the final 3, it was like really intense and kind of emotional for some of the contestants. It's different than a normal Survivor season because on a normal Survivor season, there's alliances. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've watched the show before. Like, there's alliances, right? Like, these 5 people against these 5 people. This is like they've gone through a whole season of 20 people with almost no alliances. The only alliances were maybe of 2 people that decided we're going to team up, but not bigger than that. And every week it would change. And it's all because they actually all know each other from before in a certain way. Some more than others, but they've all sort of know each other. They're not strangers. So there's like a real bonding aspect between the whole group of all being there kind of together. It was just tremendous, and I'm so sad it's over, and I don't know what's gonna be for the next one. Like, Survivor always ends with like a preview for the next season. Like, even if they don't have the people, they show you where it's going to be and what it's going to, like, the twists a little bit. And here they couldn't show you anything, but he's like, send us your applications. We want people 16, 17, 18-year-olds. I'm like, what? They're going to send a 16-year-old onto Survivor? How is that going to work? but like, that's what he was asking for. So I was kind of surprised. Anyways, I'm just so sad it's over. It was so good. And just in case you care, Tony was the winner. I don't know his last name. Sorry, but he deserved it. He should have been the winner. And was I cheering for him? No. But like, he definitely kind of deserved it for sure. So there's no doubt about that.
So I read a bit about Survivor this week.
Yeah.
And hard to believe that it's been on for 20 years.
It's nuts, right?
But have you seen every season of the show?
No, not even close.
Okay. So here's what I found interesting. Listen to all these pro athletes or former pro athletes that have been on the show. I didn't realize this. I don't know if you knew
right,
this.
Okay. So like, I think I told you this. So I think I've watched like maybe the first 7 or 8 seasons, years, sorry, which represents like 15, 16 seasons, right?
Right.
Out of the 40. So, I mean, missing like 10 years is like missing 20 seasons, which is what I've missed, right? So, like, I really didn't know a lot of the contestants that were on in this show, Winners at War. Like, I didn't know most of them. And some I did know, like, from the earlier days, you know?
Well, so
tell me the pro athletes. Yeah, I know Jimmy Johnson, the coach.
Yeah, he's one of them. I didn't know he was on. Former baseball player Jeff Kent.
Yeah, I remember that.
Former baseball player John Rocker. What a jerk he is.
I didn't watch when he was on, yeah.
Former soccer player Ethan Zahn.
Well, Ethan is like, he was in this one.
Because he won one year.
Yeah, he was in the show that I just watched, The Winners at War, but like, he wasn't a famous soccer player. He's much more famous for being Survivor.
Right.
Yeah.
Former NFL defensive tackle Brad Culpepper.
I don't know. Okay.
And then I guess the one that I was most surprised to hear, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw.
I didn't even know that.
Now, so he's Canadian. He's the only Canadian to appear on the show, by the way.
Really?
But when he was on the show, he was already like 60 years old, I think. So it's not like, he was in the prime of his hockey career. But yet, him at 60 is in better shape than most people at like 40.
Well, I remember when Jimmy Johnson was on, and he was not a young man when he was on the show. He was 60 years old probably also. And I had so much, I don't like Jimmy Johnson. He was the coach of the Cowboys. Like right away, like that's a strike against him, and so I never cared for him. But boy, oh boy, when he was on Survivor, like I had so much respect for him because like he was really like, he pushed himself, it was impressive to see. And they all liked him and everybody else really respected him. So
Tom Laidlaw says he lost 27 pounds in the 30 days that he was there.
Oh, no. I could imagine. Like, you could see all the people on this year's, like, they are, when they get to the end, they're sticks. They've shrunk, all of them.
I didn't even know that Canadians were allowed to be on the show. I didn't know a Canadian could even enter.
Me too. I didn't know either.
Anyway.
So maybe I should try.
Maybe you should.
Yeah, right.
Your bad back. I don't know how that's going to work.
I would never do that show. Are you kidding? All right, so is that it, the TV segment?
That's it.
Major League Baseball.
I want to talk a little bit about baseball.
Baseball, sure. Let's go. I mean, that was the biggest thing in the news this week.
Well, actually, this was not in the news this week because, as I mentioned to you, with all this extra free time that I have lately, I've been learning a lot of things. And this show, this podcast, is a mascot-friendly environment. Am I correct?
Of course, we are. Our Twitter account is followed by the Mascot Hall of Fame account.
So, listen to this. Did you know this? And I have a quote to read to you. The Montreal Expos, before Youppi, had a different mascot for one season. Did you know this?
No.
Okay. So the mascot's name, he only lasted 1 year. His name was Suki, Souki. And
really?
Yes. Well, so he didn't last for a couple of reasons. When you Google him, you'll see that he looks a lot like Mr. Met. His head is basically a baseball.
Okay.
Except that he also had odd antennas sticking out of the sides of his head. So he was scary looking.
Oh my God, I'm looking at it.
And listen to this quote from him.
He looks like an Expos Mr. Met. Yeah.
So listen to this quote from him, and I'll send you the link to this story. Later in the game, a furious father got up and attacked me. He punched me in the face and pushed me over a row of seats. Luckily, my head took most of the impact. Soon after, I was released from the Expos. This is true. I'm not making this up.
Right.
Anyway.
But what year was this? 69? It was the first year?
It was the first year.
Wow.
And
I had no idea.
I had no idea either. So it's amazing how much new stuff I've learned during this lockdown.
But when you say you've learned new stuff, like, is any of this valuable information?
Suki. I should know that the Expos had a different mascot before Youppi. I should know this stuff.
Yeah, actually, it's true. You should.
There's a really great article about Suki on MLB.com. I'll send you the link. It's too long to read. It's from 2012, but I'll send you the link. Okay. You'll read it after. It's a pretty good article.
Sure.
And then I know you were disappointed to hear that the World Baseball Classic has been postponed.
Yeah, I heard.
But this is something
Well, Josh, they had to postpone spring training, so they can't do the World Baseball Classic.
Right, of course.
Right, that's when it is.
But this is something you might be interested to know. On Friday night, this coming Friday night, you can watch the 1982 Major League Baseball All-Star Game. And I think you know where that was played.
Where is this? On what channel?
TSN 2.
I'm going to watch that. That's amazing.
I was at that game.
You were?
Yes.
That's so awesome.
I went with my brother and two of his friends.
How were you able to get tickets?
Well, I mean, we just went the day, I guess. I don't know how the system
when they went on sale.
I didn't go. My brother went, and I don't know if he did it over the phone or he went in person. We were sitting up in the upper deck. Like, we didn't have good seats.
Sure.
But we were there. And I still have the ticket stub from that game somewhere.
That's amazing. My wife's mom went to that game.
Oh, really?
Her parents, I mean.
I was going to say, what about your wife's dad?
No, they went, and I think Diane was in camp, but her sister Tracy was not. And I've heard the story that, like, they got 2 tickets to go to the game, and they brought Tracy, who was, like, wasn't a baby. She was, like, 7. And like, my mother-in-law convinced, like, the ticket person that Tracy was going to sit on her lap the entire game.
I'm surprised they let her in.
and they let her in.
I'm surprised. But yeah, they had season tickets, so they should have gone to that game.
All right, can we talk about Blake Snell?
I was going to leave it for the What's Bugging Me segment, but go ahead.
Things that bug me?
Well, I mean, it's the ultimate What's Bugging Me segment. I mean, holy smokes. Like, could it be more? First of all, it started earlier in the week when, like, you started to hear the squabbles between the Players Association in baseball and the owners, right?
Yeah.
They're already starting to like, oh, we only want to play if X, and we only want to play if we get paid, or we want there's considerations or there's stipulations, like, and as soon as both sides start opening their mouth, automatically nothing good can come of it. Like, nothing good can come of it. Like, people are in lockdown, millions of people have lost their jobs, they're not working. And now we're back in the situation where millionaires are squabbling with billionaires about money. Like, nobody needs to hear this. Nobody needs to hear this ever, because it happens all the time. And now more than ever, nobody needs to hear this. And then the biggest idiot of all idiots, Blake Snell of the Tampa Bay Rays, who is a star player in the league, one of the best pitchers in the American League, opens up his big mouth and starts saying that he doesn't want to play unless he gets paid, and he's risking his life, and it's dangerous for him to come back. And you know what? There's nothing wrong. A lot of stuff that he said made sense. Like, you can't, like, some of the stuff that he said, I understand why he's saying it, but, like, just don't say it. Just don't say it. Just don't say it. Like, keep your freaking mouth shut. Like, there's no good gonna come from opening your mouth. There's just none. And, like, he looks like a big idiot now. Like, he looks just like a big idiot now. So that's all it is.
He really does. I have to say that before he said anything this week, all I knew about Blake Snell were his stats. I knew nothing about him until he opened his mouth. And now, right. I mean, if you read his quotes, they're bad. But if you actually hear him say it out loud,
they're worse.
It's
he
even
sounds
worse.
Like an idiot.
He sounds like a complete moron. And the words tone deaf come to mind, because clearly this guy has no clue. And by the way, 2 days later, Bryce Harper backed him up and said almost the same thing. I mean, I don't know his exact quote, but Blake Snell is not the only player that thinks this. He might be the only player that said it out loud, but he's certainly not the only player that thinks it. Yeah. But these players are dumb, because I'll tell you why. First of all, like you said, no one wants to hear this during a pandemic when people are losing their jobs and people are dying. Mm-hmm. But on top of all that, if you don't accept the owner's offer, which it may suck, but if you don't accept it, there's going to be no games and you're going to get $0. So,
right. He's saying, I don't want to pay for half. I'm already going to get 30% less. And now they want to take half of that. And how come I'm going to play? I'm like, okay, well, you could get zero.
Exactly.
You know?
Like, so
how does zero strike? How do you like the sound of zero?
Exactly. So this is why, he should just shut his mouth. And if he doesn't want to play, and if guys don't want to play because they're afraid of getting sick, I'm all for that. Like, go ahead. You don't have to play. No one's putting a gun to your head. But if you do want to play, then you're going to have to play by their rules.
Yeah.
Like, why should you get paid the same amount for playing half a season?
Right.
Anyway.
And the interesting thing is that the Players Association is worried now, and rightfully so, that the MLB is trying to sneak in a salary cap on them, right? Because they're saying, we don't have the revenue now, which is all true. And, the other sports, the players share the revenue and all this. So, like, they're trying to, like, get a model like the NBA have or the NHL, and MLB the players are like, they're not going to have any of that. They're not.
Right, but if you look at the other leagues, the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, that do have a salary cap and they do have revenue sharing, all three of those leagues are doing fine.
Well, fine. I mean, yeah. Oh, you're talking about before the pandemic, like they're doing well in terms of...
They were all doing fine. So you know what? Yeah. The revenue sharing and the salary cap, it's not such a terrible thing.
No, it's not. No.
It's just that the Players Association, I mean, look who leads the Players Association in baseball. It's Tony Clark, a former player. When it was somebody like Donald Fear who actually had a clue.
Yeah.
I don't like Donald Fear, but he actually had a clue of labor negotiations and legal things. Tony Clark is a former baseball player. What degree does he have? From what university? I would like to know.
No. I mean, he can certainly speak to things that Donald Fear or someone like Donald Fear cannot, which is sort of like a view of what it's actually like to be a major league player, you know? So I get why Tony Clark's there, but you're right. You know, when it comes to like labor law and stuff like this, like, I mean, come on, you know? All that to say is I don't think we're going to see baseball anytime soon, so.
No, agreed.
Right. And the weirder thing, and actually the thing that's really, really a bit concerning, and I can't wait to see sort of how it plays out, is like, what's going to happen with college football in the United States? Like, did you listen to the sports reporters? They did a good like 10-15 minutes on it this week.
Yeah, I mean,
and
if you
was
don't,
pretty fascinated.
If you don't allow students to go to class, how can you have football players playing games?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like college, like University of whatever is closed. USC, they're completely closed. Oh, but the football players can play.
And by the way, if they do let them play, then that whole term called student athlete is out the window.
100%, because the NCAA and the college system has fought tooth and nail in court even to not have the players declared like workers, right? You know, like there's certain states where they're saying like the players should be paid, and like there's this whole legality around like unionizing college football, and the NCAA and colleges have fought tooth and nail against that, and now basically they're coming out and saying, oh well, we need you guys to play because we need to make money. You know, like, so okay, so they are employees then. Is that what you're saying? Like, that's
exactly it. And so, you know,
it's really, I mean, you know, how often have we talked about college football in 3 years? Like, rarely. Like, usually like the week before the championship game. Like, that's when we talk about it, right? Like, pretty rarely. So, I mean, I'm not invested in any team. I'm not a super fan. I'm not a Michigan guy. I'm not at Ohio State. I'm not at Oklahoma or Texas or anything. Like, I don't have an allegiance. But I'm a interested observer at this point. You know, I just want to see what happens.
College basketball.
Since you mentioned college football, I guess we can segue to college basketball.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
I'm assuming you heard this lawsuit that's going to happen against Zion Williamson.
Oh man, this is nuts also. This is like also really, I started to hear about it and I read about it. I was like, oh, this is not good, you know?
I first heard about this, like rumblings about this, I think 6 months ago or something. And it was just a one short little story, you know, 2-3 lines. And it didn't seem like such a big deal because none of the major news outlets picked it up. But then this week it's huge. And so just to give a recap, because you and I haven't even talked about this.
No, we haven't talked about it at all. We haven't even texted about it or nothing. And the listeners,
I'm sure, don't know, or maybe they do. So Zion Williamson signed with this agency when he finished his college career. And then, I guess, I don't know, a month after signing with that agency, he wanted to get out of the deal because apparently that agency is not... it's not sanctioned by the NBA Players Association or something like that. So he broke the deal with that company, and then he went and signed with, I think it's called CAA. It's a company that a lot of basketball players are part of. And so now the former agency, and I don't know the name of it, they're now suing Zion Williamson because he breached their agreement. It was supposed to be a 5-year agreement. He breached it. So they're suing him. And they also want him to admit that he took compensation from Nike and Adidas. And I don't know if he was paid or maybe his family was paid.
Well, suddenly his uncle had a brand new home and a new job in another city. Like, there's all this weird stuff, right? Yeah.
And now Coach K is going to be deposed because apparently, you know, he knew everything. And I mean, listen, whether it happened or not, I don't know. But whether Coach K knows everything or doesn't, I'm sure he knows everything. Whether this is ever going to come out, I have no idea.
So, like a few years ago, this similar stuff sort of happened with Pitino, where basically we found out that like bags of money are being delivered to players, right? And in the Pitino case, it seemed like, oh no, I'm not thinking of Pitino. I'm thinking of what's his name, Stanford or.
Oh, you're thinking of Arizona.
Arizona.
Yeah, I forget the coach's name.
Yeah, where, you know, bags of money are being delivered to players, and is the money coming from the school or is the money coming from Nike? either way, it's not cool. But at least if it is coming from the shoe companies, the school could say, we have nothing to do with this. Like we didn't know about it. They can deny it. So it seems like in the Zion situation, there was a lot of money changing hands, and like Duke is I'm sure they're going to come out and say we didn't know, or nothing came from us. But like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to say Zion was ineligible, and they're going to remove Duke's ACC. Like they didn't win anything anyways. So.
Right, but I mean, speaking of the worst thing that could happen, I mean, Duke could end up firing Coach K. I'd be stunned, but it could happen. I mean, but if the other coaches, like the coach at Arizona wasn't fired, Bill Self at Kansas wasn't fired, what's it called? Calipari in Kentucky wasn't fired, and I don't think he may not have done anything wrong at Kentucky, but I think he did do something wrong at Memphis, and he wasn't fired. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not... I don't know the insider information. I don't have any of that. But
it's Sean Miller was the coach at Arizona.
That's right.
Right.
But it's I've been saying for years, when I hear all these other schools breaking all these rules, and you never heard anything about Duke in our lifetime at least. I've been saying to myself, it's only a matter of time before you hear something bad happening at Duke.
Yeah. Well, especially they go after the most high profile players. I mean, like, has to be, no?
You would think. It wouldn't surprise me.
The National Hockey League.
Do we have time to talk about hockey?
Of course, we have time. It's our show. We set the schedule.
So, I'm assuming you watched the 3 Team Canada games from 1987?
I did. I watched them all. Oh my God. Did we talk about this already, though?
Well, we talked that we were going to watch it, but we haven't spoken since they were on. And I have to say, actually, I was a little disappointed. I was so excited going into it. And then I watched all of them, and they were not as exciting as I thought they would be, probably because I know the outcome, obviously.
Yeah, the games were great. This was very good hockey. I mean, don't you think?
Oh, it was great hockey. But one thing that bothered me, and this was in Game 2, it might have been in Game 3 as well.
Yeah.
So one of the players on Team Canada got injured and couldn't play, like, I don't know, the rest of the game. So at one point, because of injuries, and I don't know who, they decided to dress... 7 defensemen instead of 6. And so at one point, Team Canada was basically using only 3 lines, and the Russians were using 4 lines. So obviously when the game goes into double overtime and you're only using 3 lines, you're going to be more tired. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that in the entire country of Canada, we couldn't find 12 good forwards? Are you seriously telling me that?
Well, I don't know what happened because I tried to look up about articles to remember, and like Claude Lemieux was on the team and Kevin Dineen was on the team, but like they didn't play, right?
Right, they didn't play. I didn't see them play one shift.
So they weren't even dressed for those games. And then they had enough forwards. It's just silly that they were saying that they were tired. I was like, what do you mean you're tired? You have enough players. I actually looked at all the players and I was like, well, you're down a couple of guys. So, okay, you have 10 forwards basically, So I guess I understand they're tired, but I mean, that's the way it is, no?
Did they not pick the right players to begin with? I don't know. It's frustrating to me.
Well, don't forget that this does take place like before the season, right? This is like in August, September, this whole thing, right? It's before the season starts.
So everyone should be well rested from the summer off.
You'd figure, yeah.
Anyway, the other funny thing about not necessarily those games specifically, but any of the games from the 80s that I've been watching lately.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed the equipment.
Oh, well, I mean, the goalie equipment.
The goalie equipment is hilarious because, first of all, it's much smaller, obviously. But not only that, like, have you noticed, like, some goalies, like, their goalie pads would rip and they would patch them up with, like, a different piece of leather that didn't even look the same. It was hilarious.
There's one game that I was watching where they were showing, I think it's maybe Ron Hextall, they were showing his catching glove. And they're saying he has one glove for practice, which is, like, the regular glove. And then he has another glove, which is the same model and make, except it's laced with the laces in the mesh of the catching part is from the skate laces. He wants thicker laces. Like, this doesn't exist now, right?
No, it doesn't.
It
really doesn't. The other funny thing was the players. So I don't know if you noticed, so every team has 2 sets of helmets. They're home whites, because back then you wore white at home. And then whatever color you wore on the road. But if you notice, like, I think even the Canadians, like, everyone was supposed to wear blue helmets on the road, but they weren't all the same blue. Like, you have different shades of blue. It almost looked like you went to your local hockey rink and you're watching a beer league game.
That would never ever happen now.
Never.
Like, no, because all these events are so sponsored, right? Like some company is getting a deal, like they're the official equipment and the official jersey of Team Canada, right? Like every version of Team Canada. But I guess back then it wasn't so official, you know?
And some of the goalies even, they didn't have masks. They just wore a regular helmet with like a cage on it.
The cage, Dominic Hasek style, which like my son, when he sees that, he's like, oh God, you know, like, so yeah.
And the other funny thing is, so, you know, I talked a little bit about the old forum, and so I forgot about this completely. Back then, the team benches were on opposite sides of the ice.
That's right.
So on one side of the ice, you saw the Canadiens bench and the penalty box.
Right.
In between the Canadiens bench and the penalty box, there's 4 seats for fans.
Yeah.
Where they're right there on the boards with no glass at all. Like, they could get hit by a puck and they could be dead.
Absolutely. But like, this is different times, right? And this is the 80s. It's not like the olden days, you know? I mean, I guess for my kids now, the 80s is the olden days. It's when my kids look at games from the 80s, they're like, this is ancient. And I don't think it's that ancient. Even games from the 90s are 30 years old, right? Like, I don't think of them as that ancient, but I guess it's like, for us, it's like when we were teenagers, it's stuff from the 50s. That seemed like, you know, that was like the olden days, you know? Rocket Richard was the olden days, no?
It is. It might not be that long ago, but a lot has changed since then.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, one other...
Well, that's why, and I know we're not watching The Last Dance, but I mean, it must be the same feeling for, like, my son is loving The Last Dance because he's actually learning about Michael Jordan. And for me, Michael Jordan seems like modern day basketball. Wouldn't you agree? This is not the George Mikan, Tom Havlicek, John Havlicek, Bob Cousy basketball in black and white, right? This is Michael Jordan.
Well,
like,
that was your
basketball.
prime. Like, his era was your prime of watching basketball.
But like, those games are 30 years old, you know? or 25 to 30 years old, like Michael Jordan. And like, for my son, this is the first time he's actually able to really watch all this stuff and see, oh wow, look how good Michael Jordan was, you know? He's actually, you know, they've heard the debate online and with and on TV, you know, Jordan versus LeBron. But now all this new generation is actually seeing like what the hype was all about with Jordan. So I think that part's cool. Although I still haven't watched a second of it.
I have a newsflash for you.
Yeah.
We are old, you and I.
Yeah. Can we segue just into a quick listener mail?
Sure.
Just because I know, let's give a shout out to your old schoolmate, Jeff Leitman, who we found out this week is listening to our show every week. And he's out in California, I believe, right?
I believe so, yes.
So he actually sent you the message saying, like, you guys should watch the show. It's worth a watch. So maybe I will, I guess.
Listen, I'm going to run out of things to watch eventually, so I will watch it at some point.
I mean, every time I turn on Netflix, it's the first thing it's recommending to me.
So
right?
one other hockey note, though.
Yeah.
Speaking of Team Canada, so, you know, I mean, anytime you have to pick a Team Canada, it's the hardest thing to do because you've got like 100 guys to choose from. And when you pick your 20 or 23 guys, there's like 5 or 6 or 10 guys that you could have picked that didn't make the team. And you're going to debate about it till the cows come home.
Yeah.
So now TSN is doing this thing where they're picking not just Team Canada from now, but the all-time Team Canada.
It's totally impossible.
It's impossible to do.
Because also, how do you judge it? Do you judge it on their career or do you judge it on how they played for Canada?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
Because if we pick the all-time who played for Canada, Jordan Eberle's on my first line.
Well, that was in the juniors. That was in the juniors.
I know. Well, are they not counting the juniors?
They're not counting. They're not counting the juniors. So anyway, listen. They announced the team yesterday. I saw the roster on the screen.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay.
And again, no one is going to agree. You would make one team. I would make another team. You know, Bob McKenzie's going to make another team. Craig Button's going to make another team.
The good news about making this team is there's nothing earlier than 1972.
Well, there is actually.
There is?
Yes.
How did they manage that? They found some guy from like the Olympics in the 50s, like he played on some kind of Team Canada.
I'm glad you mentioned this because they have 3 goalies on the team, and one of the goalies I don't even know. I've never heard of him in my life.
Who is it?
I don't even know. Like, I saw the names and I'm like, who is that guy? I've never heard of him in my life.
Okay.
So, but that's not even what I wanted to talk about, because it's possible that, because obviously it was way before I was born, and maybe he was a great goalie. So who am I to judge?
Okay. Right. Sure.
But one of the modern day guys that they put on the team, and I'm waiting till the last minute to say his name here. And when I saw his name, I said, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way that this guy is one of the top 12 or 13 forwards of all time.
Right. Okay. Who is it?
Danny Heatley.
Okay. So you see, I just looked up the roster while you had a coughing attack and we had to pause. And I was trying to guess at which player you were going to single out as undeserved. And it's really between Heatley and Rick Nash that I was like, both of them are a bit shocking to me. But, like, does Danny Heatley have, like, incredible stats in a Canada jersey? Is that why, or?
I don't know. We'd have to look it up. I have no idea even how to look that up, but.
Right. It is actually a little bit shocking. You're right. But whatever. Like you said, I don't even know why they're doing this, you know? Like.
Well, they're doing it because they have no content. That's why.
Okay. So they're counting the World Championships. That's why.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. So he's the all-time leader in World Championship goals, 38 assists, 24 points, 62, and MVP honors twice, which is 2 gold medals and whatever. Like, so basically all those years when he was on Ottawa and they sucked and he went to the World Championships every year, he scored a ton of points. No?
Fine, but you know those World Championship rosters are not best on best because most of the good players are still in the playoffs.
It's silly. Yeah. Anyways, I'm glad they made the team. It's interesting, but whatever. I think it's a little bit silly. I guess look, this is the time to make these lists, right?
Yeah. What else do you have to do?
What else do you have to do? Nothing. Before we sign off, remember, you can listen and subscribe to new and archived episodes of the Skip and Josh podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and of course, Spotify. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you via email, skipandjoshshow@gmail.com, via Twitter @skipandjosh, or by liking and following our Facebook page. As always, you can get all the links to everything I just talked about on our website, skipandjosh.com.
We leave you with this.
Did you have anything to end the show with?
Yeah.
Do you have any?
I do.
Anything to leave the listeners with?
I do.
Sure, go for it.
You don't?
I have a couple of small things.
So we got some sad news this week that Jerry Stiller, who played George Costanza's dad on Seinfeld, passed away this week.
Yeah.
He was a very good actor. He made me laugh, and I enjoyed the episodes of Seinfeld that he was in.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that he passed away.
Serenity, no! Very sad, but I mean, look, I think he led a full life, and he entertained everybody, and you're right. I loved the character of George Costanza's father, Frank Costanza, is classic, right? I mean, come on. So, I mentioned that the NFL Network was really pissing me off because they're showing, and I'm holding up the air quotes, classic Super Bowl, and it was like from 2010 or 2015 or like basically the last like 10 years. Like, I don't know how those are classic. And I was like, where's the 1978? Like, where's the Cowboys Steelers from the 70s? Where's all this stuff? So now they're finally showing some of this stuff. So they had on the 1981 NFC Championship game, which is the 49ers versus the Cowboys. The famous The Catch, Dwight Clark game. Like, this is the game that made Joe Montana into Joe Montana, basically. And then just 2 days ago, when I recorded it, I haven't watched it yet, they showed the 1979 Super Bowl between the Steelers, the 78 season, January 1979 game between the Steelers and the Cowboys. It's the 35-31. I mean, this is way before my time. I've only ever seen the highlights, so I was excited to actually watch the whole game, and I recorded it. So finally, NFL Network's finally like paying attention and actually showing classic games that when they call them classic games.
Speaking of old games that I'd like to see,
yeah.
I would like to see the last Expos game at Olympic Stadium again.
Really? But do you think they have that?
Well, someone must have it. It's not that long ago.
They must.
I don't remember.
Have you been watching any of the so-called classic Blue Jays games that they're showing on Sportsnet?
No.
Also, they're completely missing the boat because they're only showing the games from like the last 5 years.
No, I mean, they did show a bunch of Blue Jays Oakland A's games when, they faced each other in not the World Series, but just before the World Series.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So those are from the early 90s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I don't have any need for any old Blue Jays games.
Right. Okay. All right, Josh. Same time next week.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you then.
Okay, bye.